All right, cool. So just to get started and put this in a little bit of context, I am trying out a poll in Zoom. So I'm going to launch this poll. And the question is, have you ever been passed over for a job you were qualified for because you didn't have enough experience? And the answers are yes or no. All right. I don't know exactly how this shows up on your side, but I'm seeing the answers come in. Great. You can see what the answers look like here. Love a good data viz. So 92% of you have said yes, and 8% have said no. To those of you who said no, that's amazing. This to me was like a constant source of frustration when I was applying for jobs before I found the data school. Just this idea of like, yeah, I can do this, I can do all the things that you note, but like then you have this dumb thing that says, oh yeah, and 5+ years of experience. And it's like, well, how am I supposed to get experience if nobody will hire me at, without experience? Crazy. I'll share these results. I don't know exactly how that looks for you either, but yeah, so that's why I love this data school application process, because it's not, what we're asking you to do is like demonstrate 5 years of experience in data visualization. All we're asking you to do is demonstrate that you can do data visualization, that you have a drive to learn, that you're self-motivated, right? That you have an analytical eye, that you're a critical thinker, right? All these things you can demonstrate to us through this application process. And so that's awesome, but it can still be a little confusing to like understand like what exactly are we asking for, because it's a pretty specific project, right? This data visualization that we're asking people to do. So that's what I'm hoping to really illuminate for you all today. A little bit about me, in case you haven't seen me in a presentation before. My name is Colin. I am the head of recruitment for the Data School New York. I am also an alumni of the Data School program. So I've kind of been sat where you are now, looking at this kind of daunting data viz project, feeling excited about the opportunity, but also like a little bit overwhelmed with what I'm being asked to do. When I'm not doing head of recruitment things, I am just sort of a general consultant on call for the information lab. So I will work with clients. I'm also there to help out our data schoolers in training if they have questions on the work that they're doing. I coordinate our Till Plus program, which is our nonprofit consulting that we do. We provide free pro bono consulting to nonprofits that are using Tableau. It's really fun. And I am a co-lead of the Accessibility Tableau user group, which is a group of Tableau users that are interested in accessibility. And we define that pretty broadly. It could be anything from using the right kinds of colors to avoid confusing people who have color blindness to, how do we even create a Tableau dashboard that somebody who can't see could still understand? So we define it broadly. We meet like quarterly. So I might be talking about some of those accessibility principles later on today as we're looking at good and bad dashboards. All right. So just a brief recap. What's the Data School? It's a program. You can think of it very much like an apprenticeship in the field of data visualization and analytics. Started in 2015 by the Information Lab, which is a global data viz consulting company. We recruit 8 people every 2 months for a 2.5-year long contract to join the Information Lab as one of our data visualization consultants. It begins with 4 months of intensive training in 2 tools. One's called Tableau. That's the one that you're probably already familiar with. And the other one is Alteryx, which is a data preparation tool. If you're interested in learning Alteryx, you can find a 14-day trial on their website. After you do that training, you work as a consultant with our clients, many of whom you can see down here in the bottom right. We've had over 400 consultants go through this program in several different locations around the world, from London to Hamburg, Germany. We have 3 data school programs active in Australia, in Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne. So tell your Australian friends. And then now the newest one is here in New York City. All right. And another kind of recap of how do you apply to the data school. Step 1, join the Tableau community. You can join Tableau Public on the Tableau Public website. It's public.tableau.com, and download their Tableau Public software. You can use it either on Mac or PC. Tableau Public is also a great place to get inspiration. So I'm going to be showing you some successful visualizations tonight that hopefully will be inspiring to you. But honestly, like, Tableau Public is an endless font of inspiration when it comes to data visualization. Definitely encourage you to just kind of like skim through it on a daily basis and see what's around. Once you've got Tableau Public, you've got some inspiration, pick a data set based on anything that you're interested in. It could be, you know, pop culture, it could be science, it could be politics, it could be the clothes in your closet. You can either make your own data set or you can find one online. Create a visualization using Tableau and publish it to the Tableau Public website. Once you've done that, you can share it with us on our apply page. I'll just quickly drop that apply page into the chat. So you have it. It's www.thedataschool.com/apply. You can find all of our cohorts open on that website. On there, you will submit us a link to your visualization, and then we will send you feedback on that visualization. So this is one of the things that we do in the data school that is different from most employers. We want you to improve your application. And we want to help you make the best application you can. So when you submit your visualization, we'll send you some written feedback that's specific to your viz. You can use that feedback, and I would highly encourage you to use that feedback to improve your visualization and submit to us a second draft. So for instance, for this next cohort that we are recruiting for, it's cohort 5. The deadline to submit, if you want feedback, is June 8th, and the final deadline will be June 15th. Of all those, we'll pick the top candidates to go to our interview stage. And I'm going to show you on my next slide, or maybe a couple slides, what actually we're looking for. There's 3 criteria. But we'll select the top group. Those go to a round of phone interviews with one of our coaches where you present your video visualization over the course of 5 minutes. Talk through your major points of analysis and the things you figured out about the data. And then if you make it to our final round of application or interviews, then you don't get to choose the data anymore. We send you a data set and you have a week to build a visualization based on the data that we send before coming back for a final interview where you again present your dashboard to a panel of our staff, answer some questions about the world of consulting, and that's it. That's the process. So just a tip here, find a data set that you're passionate about and that you have some knowledge of, right? So maybe you work as a nurse, right? And you kind of went through all of COVID as a nurse, and that kind of is like sitting on you. Maybe you want to do a visualization about that. Maybe you love a particular video game and you want to build a visualization about that game, right? Really, the opportunities are endless. I've seen people do visualizations on just about everything. The most important thing is that you're passionate about it, because it's going to be way more fun to build a visualization if you actually like the topic, and you're going to find out a lot more if you actually have some familiarity with it. All right. Also, just submit early. I know that feedback deadline is June 8th, so it's pretty easy to just be like, oh, that's my deadline, right? But I can guarantee you that Mel, my colleague, and I are going to be inundated with visualizations on June 8th. And so, we're going to absolutely get to all those visualizations and give them feedback. But my guess is the quality of our feedback will probably be a little bit higher if you submit early, because we're going to be trying to crank through a bunch in the days after June 8th. And then, yeah, always revise based on that feedback and submit us another dashboard. We're not giving you that feedback just to like dunk on you and be like, wow, here's all the things that you sucked at in your visualization. That's not the point. The point is for you to take that feedback and actually use it to make a better product. All right. So I told you I would tell you exactly what we're looking for and the criteria that we're scoring on, right? So these are the three things. 1, visualization, specifically best practices, right? Are you giving us the purpose and context of your visualization? Are you using titles? Are you using text effectively? Have you edited your tooltips? Are you using color effectively? Are you using interactivity in your viz? Are you using the right visualization or chart for the work? Oh, great question from Inyoung in the chat. What's a BAN? A BAN is an acronym for big astronomical number. That's the G-rated version of that chart title. I'll show you an example in some of our charts later on tonight. You do not need to use BANs. That's just kind of one of the things that you could potentially use. We're not like checking to make sure that you use a BAN. And then, yeah, are you spacing out your viz well? Are you using padding? Are you creating sections so that it's easier to go through your viz? Secondly, analysis. Are you just giving us like the what, when, or are you actually getting into deeper levels of analysis? And when I say deeper, I mean like second and third order analysis, like why is something the way it is? How did it come to be that way? And then third order would be like the so what, right? What's the implication of this? Why should I care, right? About what you're saying. So just an example. Say you are building a dashboard about sales of some widget that your company makes, right? And you say, okay, I've made a bar chart. It shows the blue widget sold the most of any of the widgets in 2010. Great. You visualized data. Hooray. But it's not very interesting, right? What more can we uncover? So maybe second order analysis would be like, okay, the blue widget sold the most in 2010, and that's likely because we had a big discount running on the blue widget in 2010, right? We had like a 30% discount on the blue widget. So it was way cheaper than all the other widgets. Awesome. So that gives me a little bit more of like the why, right? Third order would be like, okay, the blue widget sold the most in 2010, probably because we had a big discount on it. But actually, the company lost a lot of money on that widget in 2010, right? Because we discounted it so heavily, we were actually losing money when we sold it, right? So maybe that wasn't such a good business decision on our part. So nod your head if that kind of makes sense, that example. All right, cool. Yeah, so always getting into those so what's. Justin in the chat asks, so should you have a call to action at the end, or is it just kind of good to have root cause analysis? I think root cause analysis is fine. You just want to make sure you get to like that underlying cause. Yeah, it doesn't need to be like, now go off and do this thing. But we do want to see that, you've got into those so what kinds of questions. Akeem asks, are you specifically looking for captions directly on the dashboard or in a separate story? Is a separate story sheet acceptable? Generally, we prefer it to be in more of a dashboard style than a story style, though people do occasionally apply with like Tableau stories. I like to see it in a single dashboard because to me that shows more technical proficiency on your side. If you can organize like a long form dashboard, that is more complicated to do in Tableau, so it's more impressive to me technically. Good questions. Keep them coming if you have them. Oh, I did get another one. Okay. Injung asks, using this example, so about the widgets, would you want like a follow-up chart on profits to show that the company wasn't profiting from the discount, or is it okay just to hypothesize these things? I would love a chart that shows it, right? That would be my preference. Sometimes you can't find it in the actual data itself, and maybe you need to do a little outside research, in which case, you know, if you've done outside research to try explain some anomaly that you're seeing in the data, that's fine too. But ideally, you can find something in your data that explains it. And if it's in the data, you should have it in the data visualization. Yep, great question. All right, some more tips. Contextualize your information at the top. So like pretend that the person that is looking at your viz has no like familiarity with the topic, right? So you might need to kind of provide some context. Don't use automatically sized dashboards. It's better to use a fixed size dashboard. If you use automatically sized, then it'll kind of expand or contract to how much space the person viewing the dashboard gives it on their screen, which means all these stuff that you like meticulously placed in a specific spot is like now going to be wonky and all over the place. So generally fixed size is better. Creating sections and using questions to guide your story. I wouldn't say that that's like a must, but it's often a helpful way to draw somebody through your analysis. Tell a story. You know, what is the story of the data? Don't use fake data. Please don't use fake data. That's one of the fastest ways to get your visualization kind of discounted in the final estimation of who gets in to interviews. We really want to see people coming up with real world insights about real world data. And then, yeah, our Successful Applications website is a phenomenal resource. If you haven't looked at this already, let's look at it right now. We post every single successful application to the Data School's dashboard to our website. You can scroll down and down and down and down. And if you wanted to look at like my application viz, you could go into DS17. Be nice if you look at it. But you know, there's no secrets here, right? About who gets in. We're posting all of these on our website. So for instance, if we want to look at the most recent cohort in the Data School New York, cohort 3, I can look and see like, oh, this is like Connie Koo's dashboard. Cool, it was about squirrels. Now, one thing to note here is that oftentimes what we're posting in these blogs is actually somebody's second round application. So if it looks like people are all using like the same data set, it's because it's the data that we gave them for the second round. If you actually want to see their initial application, either we'll have a link to it directly, or you can go to their Tableau public. I would also recommend, you know, if you see one of these visualizations that you really like, reach out to that person. Most data schoolers are pretty active on LinkedIn and are very helpful, you know, with other people who are interested in applying to the data school. So, you know, find them on LinkedIn, send them a connect request, say, hey, I'm looking to apply for the data school. Like, I really loved your viz. Like, can we connect? So yeah, it's fun to scroll through all these and see the different interpretations of the same data set. All right, back to my presentation. All right. So, oh good, now we're actually gonna look at some vises. So what I'm gonna do next is show you an example of a not so good viz. All right, and what I want everybody to do is take probably 3 minutes and just on your own, like not in the chat or anything, note down like all the things that you think about this viz, right? What are the things that you like about this viz? What are the things that you think could be better about this viz? And then we're going to kind of talk through it. This visualization was not an application to the data school. I feel like that would be kind of cruel to like take somebody's bad viz and show it to you. This is actually the first viz that our workforce development manager, Mel, ever published to Tableau Public. So she's given the blessing to rip this apart. All right, here's the viz. And I'm also going to drop this link so you can actually look at it on Tableau Public as well. And I'll give you, 3 minutes. All right. I'm gonna try and use the polling function again. I've never done this natively in Zoom before, so it may be a flop, but we'll give it a shot. I'm gonna force you all to be nice about this viz first. So I have a question. What was one good thing about this visualization? I'm gonna end the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. And now I'm gonna click share results and we'll see what happens. All right. So this is what people thought. Maybe I will put this side by side with the actual viz itself. All right. So we have keep a consistent color scheme. Yeah, so they've kind of got that red key color going. I see a lot of kind of shades of red, orange. So it's not conflicting colors. Charts are label. Yep, there's good titles. Yep. Color scheme on the map was nice. Yeah, and it's also, it matches the theme, right? So we're talking about volcanoes. When we think about volcanoes, think red, orange, lava, right? So I kind of like that the color scheme matches the theme. You can zoom in on the map, so it's interactive. Yeah. Layout. Yeah. So one of the things that I can see here is that this person, Mel, has used tiling in her dashboard rather than trying to float everything. Raise your hand if you know the difference between tiling and floating in Tableau. Some do, some not. Okay. Tiling is kind of like when you drag objects into your dashboard and they like snap in to place. Usually you can kind of see it's got like a little gray bar that gives you a note of like where exactly that is going to show up on your dashboard, and then you drop it and it kind of like snaps into that position. Floating is almost like you're making something in PowerPoint where you just like drag objects on, they can kind of sit wherever, they just float on top of that background. So I can tell, because everything is kind of lined up at these right angles, that Mel has used tiling in this dashboard, which is generally preferable. Floating, you can get into trouble when people have screens of different sizes. It's also a pain because like if you decide to resize your dashboard, then like you have to move every single object on your dashboard, versus when you are tiling, it all just kind of adjusts automatically. So I'd recommend using a tiled approach. All right. Yep, no overlap in the charts. Nothing is kind of like cut off. Nice. Yeah, good answers here. I think I like the clarity of having the labels on the bars, all of that. Okay, so now we can do the things that could be improved. All right, so let me set up a poll. Submit now or forever hold your criticism. All right. Let's look and see what you thought here. That a little bigger for everybody. All right. So let's look through here and see if any themes emerge. There could be more text analyzing why certain countries have the highest death tolls, why the timeline has random spikes, right? So that gets to that matter of like second and third order analysis, right? This dashboard just kind of showed us the what and the when and the where, right? But didn't get into any of the why, how, or so what. Timeline chart is a little bit difficult to grasp at first look. I would agree. It's super spiky, right? They've chosen to use an area chart here, which was maybe not the best choice because it does lead to it being super spiky. Maybe a bar chart would have been better, or potentially a line chart, or even just some explanation of like, why is it spiky, right? Another thing that they could have done maybe is instead of viewing it by like individual day, I think is how this is kind of set up, they could have blocked it into larger groups, right? So how many per decade, right? And then that would have kind of evened things out a little bit. Locations of the volcanoes could be a little bit more spaced out. Yeah, everything kind of blurs together here. Annotations could help. Yep. So we could have used annotations to kind of call out specific spikes, right? And explain, say, oh, this is a particularly deadly volcano in this year. Yep, just lays out the data, doesn't analyze it. Ooh, I like this one. Show some relationships between the data, right? Let's put these charts into conversation with each other a little bit. What does one chart's, information have? What are the implications for something else in the dashboard? And if you can do that through some sort of interactivity where like you click on one chart and it filters another chart to help you drill down into that insight, that's even better. We've got null values in the tooltip, right? So just general tooltip cleanliness is not great here. If I click on this one just to show you what's meant by that. When we hover over, some of these are kind of a little blank, right? So for instance, damage in millions of dollars here is totally blank. What does that null mean, right? Could we fill it in with some other value? You might have to create a calculated field that does that, right? That says something like, if it's null, then provide the answer like, no data available, right? That would be super impressive if you all did that. All right. And generally like cleaning your tooltips and making them actually a little bit more interpretable is better. So for instance, here you can see that Mel actually did edit her tooltip. She says in 1902, volcanoes caused 32,344 deaths. Great. All right. See, somebody really likes those bands. I wouldn't say it needs bands, but maybe just some things that would have provided more context would have been helpful. There are some inconsistent color schemes between the two charts. One is kind of like a gray, black to red ramp. The other one's like a yellow to red ramp. Yeah, missed some opportunities to be interactive. So if you selected one of the countries, maybe the top 10 volcanoes would have filtered just to that country, right? That's one way that we could have put some of those charts into conversation with each other in a meaningful way. Yep, no context. Similar colors are too many different things. Yep. And typography is not uniform. Ooh, I like that. I really like that answer. I see this a lot. It's like, okay, you've got like red here, and then you've got like unbolded title here, and then like bolded different font size title here. It just leads to the whole thing looking unprofessional, right? And that you didn't really put intention into the formatting. So what I try to suggest to people is like pick 3 different styles. Maybe you have like a big title style, and then you have like a smaller style that's like your text style, and then maybe you have one kind of middle one, right? And try and stick to those 3. That's actually a good accessibility principle as well, is limiting the number of like font styles that you have and being consistent with them. Awesome. Really good notes. Other things that I would say is that there's quite a bit of what we call double encoding here. So double encoding is when we represent the same measure value in multiple different ways. Sometimes it can be good. Oftentimes it just winds up confusing people more. So for instance, in this chart, the top 15, come on, zoom in. Oh, zoomed in on the wrong screen. Let's see if it works now. There we go. So top 15 countries with the highest death toll. We're actually representing that death toll in 4 different ways here. We've got the length of the bar, we've got the label on the bar, we've got the color of the bar, and then we've also got the actual axis at the bottom and the grid lines that come up from the axis, right? Do we really need to represent this value in so many different ways? I would argue probably not. I think that this would have been a cleaner chart if they just removed color entirely, relied on the bar, kept the label, and got rid of the axis. So for instance, if I wanted to, oh, she's disabled me duplicating that. That's frustrating. I was going to show you exactly how I would do it, but you can imagine this chart just with every bar being a single color, keeping that label, but then getting rid of all that axis information. That way we could also get rid of this legend, right? And generally reducing visual clutter, is a good principle. All right. Nobody said it, but volcanoes is also spelled wrong through this entire dashboard. There is actually an E there. Volcanoes is how you spell volcanoes. So please check your spelling and grammar. I know that it can be tricky because there is no spell check within Tableau, but just copy and pasting all your text into Word, right? To give it that sense check is helpful. All right, so let's talk about some successful dashboards now. I'm pleased to show you Vivian Ng's dashboard. Vivian was part of DSNY3. I'll give you all the link to this visualization. All right, there it is. If you ever lose track of it, you can also find it on the successful applications page from DSNY3. While you take a look at it, I'm going to answer this question from Justin in the chat. Also, should we have an exciting or an informative headline as a general rule? Yeah, I would say yes. Having some sort of top level, like, because I think in that one it was just like volcanoes. It's like, okay, so what, right? What's the big takeaway, right? Ideally, it'd be something like volcanoes are getting more deadly. Volcanoes are getting less deadly. The places that volcanoes are erupting is changing, right? What's our big takeaway here? All right. So now let's think about some things that Vivian does right in this successful application to the data school. I know I haven't given you a lot of time to explore it. I'm not going to do a poll this time because I feel like it's just a little clunky. But if you want to just drop some things in the chat that you think are done well in this viz. Randy, I was laughing at your comment there. For those of us watching the recording later, it says definitions in tooltip in all caps, and then not yelling, just impressed. I agree. That was definitely a shock and awe moment in this dashboard. So you can see you can actually hover over any of the text that's underlined and it provides a definition. Sweet tip, Vivian talks about how she does that in a blog on the Data School blog, if you want to know how she did that. But not only did she do it, she also told you that you can do it, right? So I see this as a miss a lot with people's dashboards, as they include some really cool activity, and then they don't provide any call out that it's there. You know, because I know Tableau, sometimes I'm looking for it, I'm trying to click on things, but much better would be instructions to your end user about the interactivity that you've included. Variation on charts and graphs. Yep. So for those of you who didn't know what a band was, it's this thing up at the top. It's kind of like big contextual numbers at the top of the dashboard that tell you some of the most important things that you should know. Again, not required, but sometimes a helpful tool. And it's not just that she uses various chart types. Like, what I really love here is that she uses various chart types, but they're actually appropriate to what she's trying to show, right? She's not just varying the chart type for the hell of it. She's varying the chart type because it's actually the chart type that's most helpful for showing that data. Helena says use of color. Yeah, isn't this viz just like nice to look at, right? It uses consistent color. It uses nice spacing and sectioning, right? And padding. All these things just make it easy on the eyes, right? And before I even notice anything about a dashboard, I can already feel like, do I like looking at this or do I not, right? And it's all those kinds of formatting choices and consistency that create that feeling. Clear graphs that are easy to comprehend on your own. Yep. Cites the data source. Yeah, like that right down here. I would highly recommend anytime you publish a data visualization to Tableau Public that you include some sort of connection to the underlying data. It's good practice, as well as icons. Good attribution. Good use of scaling. So the size of the visuals to disseminate information and indicate the order of significance and importance, right? So let's start with the most important things up top, right? And then go into detail as you kind of go through the story. Yeah, I like that. Very clean. Yeah, the pun for the titles is great. If you ever get to know Vivian, she is like the pun queen. If you look at any of her blogs, they all include lots of puns. But you know, one of the things that we like to get from people in this application process is like, who is this person? Just on a personality wise, right? We're going to be working together for 2.5 years. So it's nice to have some sense of, you know, your personality shining through in your visualization. It doesn't have to come just in your data viz. There's also a place in the application to just tell us more about you. You can think of that as like a formal cover letter. You're welcome to treat it that way, but you can also just kind of talk a little bit more about why you're interested in the data school, what makes you unique. Shalimar notes that it shows a demarcation line when the data spikes. Yeah, so like there's a pretty clear inflection point in this data, right? And I love the use of a reference line as a call out there. She does it both in this chart and then later on in this one as well. Justin asked, did Vivian do the open house demo last week? Yes, Vivian did. Yeah. She introduces the concept well to a general audience, right? Like it's kind of this very wonky thing, right? Like HIPAA breaches, right? but she drew it from her actual experience doing work in data in the healthcare industry and kind of seeing these breaches happen. Randy asks, so under the Breaching for America heading, you can select the topics in the boxes, but nothing happens. Are you talking about these boxes, Randy? Yeah, so sometimes you might just want to put like a little chart that doesn't have a tooltip, and you can turn off the tooltip. It doesn't always have to have interactivity. So I don't think she felt that she really needed that to do anything. She does have this interactive element here where you can change the metric that's being shown, which I like. So if you wanted to see like the percent of people in a state that were affected, you can select that metric instead. And then you can really see some anomalies like, wow, 93.6% of New Mexico's population was affected by a HIPAA breach. Like, that's kind of crazy. I think that it's fine to do it as a dropdown. She could have been really fancy and maybe used like a parameter action, and like you could have clicked on each of these boxes and it would have switched. But I don't think it's necessary, as long as she provides an option. All right, nice. That was awesome. Do you all want to see another good one? Yeah, cool. So this next one is going to be from Elaine Yuan. It's in cohort 2. And it's on the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes in New York City between 2019 and 2021. I'll open up the visual here, and I will also provide you the link in the chat. I'll give you a couple minutes. We're coming to the end of our time, so I might not give you quite as much time. But yeah, just as you see things that you like or that she's done well, feel free to drop them in the chat. Lisa notes that there's more visualizations in the tooltips. Yeah, so if we go down here, we can see that Elaine's done a more kind of technical thing here in Tableau, actually embedding a visualization in the tooltip. Maybe you knew you could do that, maybe you didn't. But remember, it has to be purposeful, right? So don't just show me like technical flourish just to show me you can do technical flourish, right? Like I think that the way she's used it here, where you actually get to break down this metric on the number of incidents by the type of incidents in the tooltip, makes sense. Other things that we think Elaine does well here, feel free to just drop them in the chat. Yeah, Randy says the bottom, next steps. Yeah, what can we do, right? So we talked about like, does it have to have a call to the action at the end? Well, no, it doesn't have to, but if appropriate, yeah, maybe it should, right? So in this case, Elaine is clearly passionate about this. She wants to see, you know, anti-Asian hate crimes decrease in the city. So she provides some specific next steps for somebody. Helena says, I like how she used art to show how language can drive hate. So Helena is referring to this kind of top image here, which is kind of like a political cartoon. Yeah, I agree. I think it was appropriate to the topic, and it definitely grabs your attention at the top. Tells a great story. It's easy to follow. I like that it's personal too. You know, like she talks about something being terrifying, right? I think sometimes we can think, oh, data is kind of like disconnected from emotions or whatever, right? But no, data can scare us, right? And I think bringing in that human element is valuable. Uses simple language and not jargon. Yep. Can just tell she put a lot of work into it. Yeah, definitely. And you know, there's small technical things that I notice in here, right? So like she's layered on points of where these incidents occurred on top of a choropleth map that shows us the number of incidents in a particular precinct, right? Again, it's technical, but it's purposeful. There's a lot of work that she's done to just minimize that visual clutter, right? So she's gotten rid of grid lines here where they weren't really necessary. Same here. I do see still some of that like double encoding. Maybe it wasn't really necessary, but you know, you can make mistakes and still get into the data school. And you know what? Sometimes if it's more of an informational viz, you know, there's arguments to be made for this kind of double encoding. So I wouldn't like totally throw it out because of that. Justin says, I hope Tableau Public has some of these options available so that he can experiment. Yeah, this was designed using Tableau Public. So yes, anything that you see in here can be used. If you ever want to like really dig into how a viz is made, you can either make a copy. And in that case, it's going to make a copy and you can actually use the browser-based version of Tableau Public to like go into the charts and like see, for instance, like, oh, that's a really cool thing that she did, layering those points on top of the map. How did she do that? Let me actually go into that chart, see what she did. Oh, she's using like the marks card here. She's got marks layers going on, right? How did she build that? You know, that kind of thing. If you don't want to do it that way, you want to do it on the actual desktop application, you can also usually download somebody's viz. I would recommend not publishing if you do that make a copy option. Kind of went to that specific sheet. Yeah. So the download button is right here, and you can download the Tableau workbook yourself. One more description of double encoding. It's when you take the same measure and encode it in with two different visual methods. So for instance, in this chart, she encodes the same value, which is this incident count, with both the color of the bar and the length of the bar. So in that case, we would call that double encoding. Yep, no problem. All right, I know we're getting to the very end of our presentation, so let's see, make sure I hit all my slides. I think I'm almost done with my slides. Yeah, just one more. We're at the very end. I want to show you this because I think it's so cool. You know, we all start not knowing how to use these tools, right? And that's totally fine. But you can get so much better through this process of iteration. And there's a great example of this with George Ledger, who's actually one of our data schoolers in the UK, recently hired. And he made this really cool viz that uses story points in Tableau to show what his iterative process looked like for a visualization. In this case, it was about Pokemon. This is his first ever dashboard. Actually, not bad for a first dashboard, you know, respect. I think it's better than mine, my first one. Second, all right, we can see he's like learned how to adjust his dashboard sizing. Cool, he's providing some more context. Whoa, big change here. I'm also just going to drop this link in the chat so that you all can peruse it at your own time. Right, really starting to say, okay, let's tell a story, right? Let's start with a beginning, middle, and end, right? Also, major changes to the formatting, but still maybe not super like professional looking, right? Like not great use of padding, color choices and borders are still a little iffy here. So I think this is what he submitted to the dashboard and to the data school and then got feedback from us. So between 3 and 4, ooh, love those brand colors, right? Keeping the colors in the theme. Doing some very flourishy things like rounded corners. That's not an easy thing to do in Tableau. Great. But still, I'm feeling a little bit of like the so what, right? There's a lot of text here. You know, what am I supposed to get out of it? And that's what I think he does really well in this final version. he's got like these little analysis boxes, and he's got like 2 bullets, right? Really like quick, what should you get out of this? And then he's got this cool like informational tooltip that like if you want to dig into those, he writes like a much longer explanation. Now you don't have to write this much text, like don't feel like you have to, but I like this way of like, let's get the top line thing on the dashboard and then provide a way to dig in to a deeper analysis rather than trying to clutter everything up with text on the dashboard. All right, cool. Well, we have reached the end of our hour. I hope that this has been a helpful session for you, in terms of understanding what we're looking for, what are the hallmarks of a successful visualization, what are some pitfalls to avoid, and yeah, remember, if you want feedback on your dashboard, the next deadline is June 8th. That's a Thursday, I think. And then the final deadline will be June 15th. Quick question in the chat. Was that last Pokemon one also successful? Yes, that was successful. He's part of the data school now. All right. Thank you, everybody. I've got to run, but if you have any questions,